Following the volatile situation from Gaza and its impact on the Middle East today, and Tamron Hall has more now from our news desk.
Well, Melissa, Israeli troops are positioned along the Gaza border for a possible ground invasion to end the Hamas rocket attacks. At least 350 Palestinians, including more than 60 civilians, have been killed in the four-day Israeli military campaign. 3 Israeli civilians and 1 soldier have been killed in Hamas rocket attacks. Raghida Dergham is an MSNBC analyst and senior diplomatic correspondent for Al Hayat, and Hillary Krieger is the Washington, D.C. bureau chief for the Jerusalem Post. Thank you both for joining us. Hillary, let's start off with you. What is the goal here for Israel? Is it to end the Hamas rocket attacks, or is it to wipe out Hamas completely?
Well, certainly they want to end the rocket attacks. The question is, how far do they have to go in terms of destroying Hamas itself as opposed to its military capabilities in order to achieve that goal? I don't think there are many people in Israel who'd be sorry to see the Hamas organization destroyed, but Israel's learned its lesson from the Hezbollah conflict in 2006 that to overstate the goals can lead to a difficult political situation and disappointment in the general public, and that it's better to be modest, at least initially, in terms of its first stated objectives.
What's interesting, Raghida, because we are hearing that, of course, men and armor being moved closer to the border there, and there's a report that Hamas is actually hoping for a ground offensive, and that Tom Asbell reported that they've got 20,000 fighters who are hunkered down and ready for this.
That's true. I wouldn't be surprised if Hamas would like the Israelis to come in full invasion, but I think it's an Israeli problem at this point. They started an operation that is not clear in its objectives, and I believe right now the potential of backfiring is quite a serious one, and the Israeli leadership has got to look at what do they want from this operation, because now we see civilians getting in mass numbers. We have children and women dead, we have injured in the hundreds, and the fact is that if Hamas attracts the Israelis to come into Gaza, the question becomes, does the Israel want to keep Gaza, or what else do they want to do with it?
How much support does Hamas have? We've heard that they're calling on Palestinians to fight back, even calling on suicide bombers outside of the area. What also is kind of support are we seeing from other Arab nations?
There is a split. The Arabs are fundamentally split at the level of leadership and at the level of people. Some would support Hamas and because of the Israeli ongoing occupation, and some would say Hamas is really working in concert with Iran in order, for example, to bring down the regime in Egypt. I know that sounds a little bit convoluted, but it's not, because the Iranians, together with Hamas and Hezbollah, have been escalating very, very dangerously against Egypt. And Egypt, if the regime in Egypt falls right now, I think Israel will also would be paying a price for this. So one has to be very careful. There is a partner in peace. The Palestinian Authority is negotiating, and the Israelis cannot resolve this militarily.
Let's bring in Hillary back into the conversation. Hillary, how much pressure is coming from the upcoming elections and also the transition of power happening here in the States?
Well, I think that the political situation in both countries is playing a part. Certainly the Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni and Defense Minister Ehud Barak are trailing in the polls in most polls in the upcoming Israeli elections, and they stand to gain should a military operation go well. On the other hand, there are political risks involved in any sort of military action, and I think that the political reality in America is actually more significant, that you have President George Bush, who's been very supportive of the Israeli government, particularly when it takes actions it feels it needs to do to defend itself from the terrorist threat. And when you have a new president coming in, any president, you don't know what's going to be the case, what will happen in terms of perhaps calls on Israel to restrain itself and to be more cautious in how it proceeds. So it's better to take any military action now during the transition period.
All right, Hillary and Raghida, thank you very much for your time. Well, from hockey.